Hey, it's Ken Gaddy at the YouTube channel Gamebits here to play Mushroom 11, a puzzle platformer set in a post-apocalyptic world, courtesy Untame Games. Find the game at mushroom11.com. This game was provided to me for the purpose of this interview, and I'm going to go ahead and pick up right where I left off. I already went through the tutorial stage, so now you are seeing the beginning of Chapter 2, and this green geometric shape right here that is completely inert until I provoke it is the mushroom that I'm controlling. And the way I do that is by, this is my eraser, and I just swipe right through the mushroom and I change its shape. Now this is called the eraser, but it doesn't actually erase anything, it moves it. So the total mass I have of these two mushrooms is the same as it was a moment ago. You can see that I just erased this and it actually reappeared over here without traversing the space in between. So I use this to move things along. Now, if I lose this ledge right here, my mushroom is going to fall into the lava. I don't want that to happen. And I can do a, whoops, whoa, there we go. So I'm trying to get it to go up that hole. And I'm having some success. And there we go. No, I erased too much of it. There we go. Let's try this again. Oh. And I see every time something falls in the lava, it just reappears on the other side of my mushroom. So let's see if... Oh, I am not having luck with this. This game is difficult, but I'm trying my best. There's also a way to do a smaller eraser. I've never quite mastered how to do that. There we go. Yeah! Up we go. So now let's roll this way. That's a checkpoint right there. I'm just gonna keep rolling. Just keep swimming. Uh-oh. Oh no! No! Oh. Okay, made it. Oh no. Now what do I do? Okay. So I didn't actually die in any of that, which is pretty impressive. No! Now I've died. No. Okay. So it is possible to die. Let me take one more stab at that, and then we'll bring on our interview with the co-designers of the game. This game was released for Steam on October 15th, but I first heard about... Oh, there I go again. First heard about it when I saw it at Boston Fig, the Boston Festival of Indie Games. Now, let me see if I can do this. Maybe I should go up instead. Hey, how about that? Got some bonuses up there. But it's not what I was looking for. It's not a way past this obstacle. Not a shortcut. No cheating for me. Oh, bloop. Okay. So let's try erasing that part. And let's try to make myself narrow. No! There we go. Okay. So you got the gist of the game. This is set in a world where there are no more humans anymore. Something happened to them in an apocalypse, and the game has a subtle narrative where you infer exactly what happened to them. So while I continue to probably mutilate my mushroom in all kinds of deathly dangerous ways, including but not limited to lava, let's bring on the developers from Untame Games. Today I'm speaking with Itay Keren, co-designer and programmer of Mushroom 11, and Julia Keren-Detar, co-designer of Mushroom 11, both from Untame Games. Hi.
Hi.
How are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good.
So your game at the time of this recording just came out less than a week ago. That must be a huge relief after having worked on it for so long.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely been a roller coaster of crazy emotions, excitement, fear, the whole thing. But it's been really great to get this game out and to have people play it.
Not many people mentioned fear. What were you most afraid of?
Well, it's just you work on something for so long and you put it out for the world to see. I think any creative experience has that kind of fear of will people like it? How will people receive it? That kind of fear of anything creative that you're so close to, just because it's a little bit of you that you're sort of putting out there for the world.
Sure, I can imagine. So my first question is, Mushroom 11, what happened to Mushroom 1 through 10?
That's kind of part of going directly into the game. That's a kind of a question that is it almost sounds like almost a joke, but it actually is part of the story that is only told through images and certain artifacts that you see throughout the game.
Right, so if you go through different parts of the level, you'll see references to those mushrooms 1 through 10. So we created a story around why this thing exists, and we sort of leave the story elements in the background for players to figure out or piece together if they want to or not.
Yeah, the story is very subtly told. It's not like World of Goo where there are signposts describing to you what's happening. It's more like Limbo where there is a complete lack of dialogue, either written or spoken, and players are left to infer exactly what's happening. Is there a specific narrative that you have in mind, or is it more open to interpretation?
So we had a specific narrative in mind to guide us along what we were planning to, put in the background, but we purposely tried to leave it up to players' interpretation. So we wanted to be very subtle in terms of, we didn't want signposts being like, hey, this happened here. We thought it was more important for players to piece those bits together. And if they come up with, a different story that's not the same as ours, then we're totally fine with it, as long as they have enough material to go off of to guess and come to conclusions of what happened. We feel like that's more powerful storytelling than just telling the players what happened.
It reminds me a bit of Journey, another indie game, where it did have these narrative cutscenes, but without the lack of any spoken or written language, it was still open to interpretation. I played that game once through, and I feel like I need to play it again to try to figure out what happened, because I know I didn't come to the same conclusions as some other players did.
Right, yeah, same with us.
Yeah, that's exactly the idea. We feel like, especially in first time around, where you're introduced to this mechanics that it's pretty unique and kind of absorbs the player around it more, potentially more than the story. So we thought it would be unwise to do any sort of cutscenes or something like that. I think the idea of what Limbo did. Limbo is a huge inspiration in many levels, but in terms of stories, it's very much what they chose to do. There are a lot of Limbo-esque features that kind of shine through the game as such a big inspiration for us.
I was thinking of Limbo as I was playing this game. I was reminded of, in terms of gameplay mechanics, a WiiWare game called Fluidity. Have you played that one?
I haven't played, but I've definitely heard about it. But yeah, it's I think the good thing about Mushroom 11 is that it throws a lot of players into various inspirations for them, and we've seen a lot of players coming in with even more remote examples, and it's pretty amazing to see someone who's telling us about this old Sega game called The Ooze, which I knew about, but only learned about after people told me that there's some interesting similarities, and it's kind of like throwing it out there. It's kind of taking, it's kind of this association with a lot of different games, and yet, as we've been told, it's still very unique and plays differently than any one of those games.
I was not a Sega player growing up, so I missed The Ooze, but when I first encountered Mushroom 11, it never would have occurred to me to combine Fluidity with Limbo, for example, because Fluidity is such a light-hearted game, especially it being a WiiWare game. What made you choose to create such a dark setting for Mushroom 11, which is in stark contrast to a lot of puzzle games, in my opinion?
I think we weren't really... Okay, when we started this as in the Global Game Jam, I don't think... there was no certain reference that we were going after. It was... I think the biggest inspiration was the actual theme of the Global Game Jam, and which was the Ouroboros, which is the symbol of the snake eating its tail. I wasn't really looking into trying to make like a game of life or something that mimics fluid dynamics or whatnot. What I was really trying to do is make a platformer / puzzle game, doesn't matter. I wasn't really sure where this was going at the time. So a platformer that you cannot control directly, but instead you control the negative space. You control it by destroying, and destroying subsequently leads to growth. So all these experiments led to all sorts of different direction, and this was once we hit this like a single set of cells. I'm calling it a single set of cells, and not a batch of cells, because you feel like they belong to you. Once you get to that number of cells that feel like they are like a group of one thing, and then you feel like you're a part of it. This is you. This is what you control. Once we got that, you had like this true protagonist that doesn't really look like anything else from other platformers, but it was very clear that something interesting was happening there. So that was like the moment of, okay, this is interesting. This is something that we need to look into even after the game jam is over.
And I think trying to decide which route to go. I mean, I think we were looking at the time at Limbo and Rayman Legends and trying to think of like, okay, you're this like fungus-looking mushroom in this game. So, and we just started to like also look at pictures of nature taking over in abandoned places, and that was a big inspiration for us in terms of like the setting, just because it seemed to fit. And we were really drawn to that idea of like, it was reflected in the mechanic. You're like completely destroying your character and it's growing on its own, and that's how you get anything done in the game. And so the idea that like an abandoned place where people used to live but they don't live there anymore, but it's still full of life, that was really interesting for us. So we took a lot of those images of like abandoned places, and we worked with Simon Kono, who's our artist, and he had already a very like great sort of kind of happy post-apocalyptic art style in a way. It was like very, it's like very dark, but then also kind of full of colors, and it doesn't look like so gray. And we were super drawn to a lot of the sketches he had done before and some of his artwork, and we were able to get him to work on the game for us, and it just sort of came out from there.
Have you heard of a book called The World Without Us by Alan Weisman?
Oh yeah, I think we've been doing a lot of research about what happens when our positive and mostly negative influence over the world is gone, and we've seen a lot of movies and read books and saw a lot of art style that is inspired by these things, and I think that also kind of takes you back to the idea of what the game really is. The destruction and regrowth being this one and the same, this cycle, and that kind of led to this story and to the art style, and everything comes together. We feel pretty well, and also with Simon's art style, we're very happy that we were able to get inspired by these pieces of art and literature, like the ones you said.
As you mentioned, the game was first conceived of as part of a 2012 game jam where the theme was the snake eating its own tail. How has the game changed since its original idea 3 years ago?
If you look at the prototype, it is a completely different game. It looks and plays differently. Here's the thing: the idea is exactly the same. You have a certain number of cells. You remove those cells, and they will immediately regrow someplace else, which allows you to also shape it and split it and whatnot. But at the time, this was so new to us, and this is one of those things that you need to kind of like, this needs to simmer for years, literally, and to understand what you can do with it. And at the time, all we could do is just, what I was planning on doing is just kind of the basic platformer elements that I was already familiar with from other games. So basically, it was a very simple, kind of clunky platformer with very basic platforming mechanics, with moving platforms, rotating, moving belts and whatnot. And you basically need to go from A to B. It took us years to understand the potential and change the game. And on top of that, all the growth, the growth mechanics, how to make it feel really well, move really fast, allow the player to control it really well, because it was almost uncontrollable at the time. But definitely there was some potential that we saw, and otherwise we wouldn't even continue working on it.
Another key element of Mushroom 11's development period was not crowdfunding, but the Indie Fund. Can you tell us a little bit about what that works and how that works and what you got out of it?
One of the things that we decided to do pretty early on is to try to kind of avoid the more traditional crowdfunding. We were able to, we were fortunate enough to be to have contact and good contact with Indie Fund after they saw the prototype, and they followed through in some of the shows that we showed it very early on, like Indicate in 2012. And at some point, they decided to go in and help us fund the game. Indie Fund, if you for anyone who doesn't know, is at least it started as a group of a few very successful indie developers. Some of whom are Ron Carmel and who made the World of Ron Carmel and Kyle Gabler, who made World of Goo. You have Kelly Santiago, who made Journey. You have Jonathan Blow, Aaron Isaacson. You have a bunch of really, really talented. Nathan Bella, Matthew Wagner. Anyway, bunch of really, really good people. Sorry, I as I was listing them, I realized, okay, I don't want to leave people behind. So,
a lot of really awesome people that have inspired us as well. That we really respected. So this was getting their support has been really awesome, and getting their advice and backing as well. Indie Fund has been really helpful because they're very hands-off. It's not like a publisher who will be like, oh, you're not making this casual enough, or you're not making this for this demographic, or they're very hands-off. They were like, you make this game the way you see it, and we'll help you get through the development cycle. So, and that was just really amazing to have these people back us.
It's great that you're able to retain your creative vision, because even with crowdfunding, your funders often participate to a degree in the design process, and that can be very powerful and very encouraging. But at the same time, this money that comes in through crowdfunding isn't free. There is some trade-off. There is some investment in there. Right,
and you have to, a lot of times when people plan a Kickstarter, they don't take into consideration how much stuff costs. So they promise to ship a lot of things, or postcards, posters, T-shirts, all this stuff, and that eats into the funds too. But and the flip side, Kickstarter is a great way to start marketing your game really early on, which is something that we didn't really have to do just because we didn't do the Kickstarter, and maybe that was a disadvantage for us because we didn't have this huge strong community going in to launch day, like other people who had really great Kickstarters did.
But that's not to say you were entirely cut off from your audience or that you didn't do any marketing, because Mushroom 11 has been demoed not only at Indicate, as you mentioned, but also at PAX and Boston FIG, the Boston Festival of Indie Games, which was held just last month. How has the reception at those events been?
It's been great, and it's also been really informative. We've been showing the game at those kind of shows throughout the development cycle, and for the most part, it's really informed our first user experience, or our tutorial system. And I think we worked on our tutorial system for about 2 years. It's taken a really long time to try to get the right set of puzzles and get the right set of flow for the very first chapter. That's what we consider our tutorial system. And having so many people play it has really helped us understand how to make it easier for people to wrap this idea around their heads of destruction and growth, and you're not directly controlling it. So, but how do you feel like you have control? So that was really important to us. We wanted people at the end of the level to have a good sense of control, so they don't have to be thinking about how to move their mushroom, and they can move on to more challenging puzzles in the later chapters.
And given the way that players do erase the mushroom, it seems like it would be a good fit for touch interfaces. I see on the mushroom11.com website that the game is planning on coming out for mobile devices in 2016. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's the plan. We definitely see the advantages of going. We actually had a while back. We had a prototype on mobile, on tablets. It's definitely very, very interesting and different type of play. It's very tactile, has a lot of advantages. it has a couple of challenges that we just want to make sure that we solve before putting it in the market. But yeah, definitely that's the plan. We believe it's going to be a really interesting experience.
When we say touch interfaces, does that include the Wii U and its gamepad?
We are also looking at the Wii U as well as the Vita. And there are a couple of specific challenges for each one of those as well. We're trying to get it to any device that fits the mechanics, so that it's not like forced on it, and that it plays well and feels right. Definitely, you're not going to settle on something that doesn't really convey the mushroomness,
the experience.
Is there any advice you can give for players who are having some challenges with the game?
When you say challenges, one of the things that comes to mind is that we definitely have, the game is pretty long, and one of the reasons why it's so long is because this mechanic allows us to really challenge ourselves, coming with new ideas that are connected to this kind of control scheme. And as the game progresses, some of these challenges become very, very difficult. Now that we're out, some of the things that we see after you get the game played by thousands or thousands of players is you can take some of these experiences and kind of like smooth them out, make sure that players are still enjoying the game, make sure that there's nothing that's overly frustrating. So we kind of like work with the community, making sure that if changes are needed, they're made swiftly. We're actually planning on making a big update in the next day or so. So.
But in terms of advice, it's kind of hard to point to any advice for players, just because it's something that, unless you see it, it's hard to understand. So like me telling a player, like, oh, you're deleting and you're not pushing something, like they can understand and register, but it won't actually register until they like have experienced it. But I think just, like trying to think about these puzzles in a different way, trying to think about like sculpting the mushroom, kind of like Play-Doh, is a really good way of thinking about how to move if you're sort of struggling early on. So yeah, I think that would be the advice.
Yeah, the one thing that we really, I mean, not having a hard time, but just like this is a kind of like a futile challenge, is to try to explain the game in words, and we always have the pitch that we have, but the pitch kind of sounds foreign without having to at least see a video or something. So we try to, as much as possible, we try to always show clips or vines and GIFs. Because really, and if possible, let that person play, because there really is no good way to explain the game without playing it.
I love that analogy of thinking of the game as Play-Doh. I'm going to have to do that next time I play. Thank you. You mentioned a big update coming in the next few days. Can you give us a sneak preview of what that might contain?
It's just sort of polishing, addressing some of the feedback we got early on about, saving stuff, saving little pickups and things like that. It's pretty minor. We're just sort of going through some of the later levels and making some of the puzzles a little bit easier, but not too easy. We still want it to be a pretty big challenge. So just basically sort of roughing out the edges.
Yeah, it's like streamlining the curve, but also touching a couple of very important points that some players were talking about. This is good. Having a community that helps you make the game the best it can be. Sometimes when you work on a game for so long, we keep saying that we're just getting too good at the game to actually see some of its faults. Everything, when you play the game for thousands of times, then you don't really see difficulty in the same way as a fresh player. So that was kind of a thing that we were, a lot of people were kind of talking about how challenging the game is, and even difficult at times. So we want to make sure that there's the barrier to entry is very it's mild. So one of the things that we know is that the first few levels really get you into the game, kind of introduce you to all of the different things you can do with it, and then starting in chapter 5 and forward, it's really starting to challenge you to do things that you wouldn't otherwise think were possible in any game, not even this one. So we want to make sure that any obstacle that is kind of irrelevant to the fun of the game is not there to stop you from enjoying. That's basically what we're trying to do.
It sounds like you've gotten a lot of great feedback and you're responding to that. There's one piece of feedback I'm particularly interested in for my last question of this interview. What does Paul Stamets think of Mushroom 11?
Wow.
So I've been talking to his company, and I know that they've been actually playing some of the game, and I think that they're really excited that we were inspired by his work, and I think that they're really excited that there's a game about mushrooms. And if anything, I just hope the game will inspire people to look up what mycelium is and what it can do, and it already sort of is, because people look at this and they're like, that doesn't look like a mushroom, that looks like a slime mold, so I'm trying to break the barrier of what people think mushrooms are. So I guess that's already pretty good.
Yeah, just Paul Stamets is the guy who had he's been working on the practical
application of mycelium in solving some of the environmental challenges that face us. So if you guys aren't aware, he has a really great TED Talk about how mushrooms can save the world by basically breaking down things that are not biodegradable, by using them as pesticides instead of really harsh chemicals that end up destroying other life cycles. And using them to treat oil spills and stuff like that. So it's really interesting stuff that mushrooms can do to kind of help
offset our influence and the damage.
Yeah.
And this is as you mentioned, it's a direct inspiration that shines through the game for sure, and also in many levels. And one of the things that we are very proud of is, after looking into a lot of the scientific stuff that we learned through it, we actually went even deeper, and we just want to make sure that even the theories that this game is based on are sound. And we ended up working with scientists, with actual scientists, and everything that you see around you and on the walls and theories and formulas, it's all actual formulas that we've devised for this kind of alternate reality. So we've worked on it a lot, and we wanted to make sure that going back to the first question about the story, we wanted everything to come together in a very genuine way, even though you're kind of playing this reality where a person is playing a game about a world without people, but everything has to feel like this actually is a potential reality. It was very important to us.
So it's a game that is both fun and educational. Congratulations.
Well, we weren't definitely.
I'm not sure how
We're not it's not too heavy-handed. That's for sure. We're not trying to educate people in okay, stop and listen. But if you do stop, then we want you to listen. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful balance that you've struck.
Thank you.
So it's been a great game. I've enjoyed playing it. Is there anything else you want our listeners to know before we sign off?
That you can get the game on Steam, GOG, and Humble right now. And you can follow us on Untame Games for updates.
Very good. And there will be a link to all of those in the show notes at IndieSider.net. Julia and Itay, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.